There we are. What's up, everybody? Let me see here. I know people blowing their mind like, all right, here we go. There we go. Get my camera all set up here on my phone so I can see your comments. There we go. How's everybody doing, guys? Aloha. Aloha Monday to everybody. How you, Charles? What are you eating, Charles? Peanuts?
Nope. I'm eating health food.
Like what health food are you eating tonight there, sir?
I'm eating dry aqua.
That's
Now,
definitely health food, man.
yes, it's from the motherland. It's from the ocean.
Yeah,
So,
right. I could use some dried aku right now.
yep,
Whew, it's been a while actually since I had some dried aku, but
I know. That's why I'm having dried aqua tonight.
well, it's
How you
nice to
doing,
see
folks?
you. Nice,
Yeah,
nice to see you at home and not in your airport office. So you look refreshed. Actually, you look. The last few shows you've been, understandably so. You look tired. So it looks. Hopefully everything is falling into place. And
oh, that's far from it. You know, some. I first would like to say I got really good people there, and I want to give a special shout out to the acting airport manager, who's number two, who's taking over right now, and he has so much on his plate, and that is Mr. Bruce Kaivi. Mr. Bruce Kaivi, who I tell you, he's just incredible. He's just incredible. He's doing a lot, and it's just one of those fantastic things. So I just want to send a special shout out to him. He's been uh he's been very very helpful in guiding. You know, I think for anyone who thinks, and I just want to be very very candid about this. When you take over a job and it's a brand new contract, there's a lot of eyes, there's a lot of regulations, and when you think because you've done it before, when you think that you pretty much know what to do, I can guarantee you it's not the case because times have changed. There are many requirements that are put upon you. The livelihood of all those individuals that work in the company that you're managing, they depend on you. When something just slightly goes off kilter, may it be, they're maybe they're missing an hour or two on their paychecks. It, Even though it may sound small to some, it has a profound impact on the individuals who are missing that 1 or 2 hours. So, one of the things that I do, I didn't know I had to wear a skirt to do it, is to, oversee payroll. And actually, I'm doing the payroll, which is kind of crazy, but that's part of the job. And you meticulously have to put in every shift, every worker, and they're different workers, and you have to put their hourly rate, bill rate, if they work on a holiday, and you just have to make sure that the system takes. Because when that cutoff point comes and their paycheck is due and something's wrong, definitely you will see something that's so I just would like to say thank you to number one, Mr. Bruce Kaivi, the acting airport manager, but he's the airport security coordinator. I'm going to say thank you to him. I want to say thank you to all the men and women of Allied Universal, giving you guys a shout out. You know, it, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for you folks. I also would like to give a shout out to all the men and women that work at the different airlines putting up with just the crowds of people. And it hasn't been the weather has been kind of warm lately, right? It's been really,
Yeah.
really warm. And as you know, the place is under construction, so they got these big fans, but it could be a lot cooler, but I like to say mahalo to TSA, all the different airlines, to the porters. Everyone has been accommodating because what it does, it just keeps people's tempers in check because, you get one unhappy customer and if something breaks out, you know how bad it can get, right? So I just like to give a shout out to all of them and say thank you for being so accommodating in these trying times.
Well, I don't envy
That's what I
you,
feel here.
Charlie. I do not envy you at all, man. As I every so often when I drive past, and we'll talk about that tonight as well, with just the influx of tourism and no effort by our. By the way, we have Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen tonight coming on in a few minutes. We'll talk a lot about COVID and variants and vaccines, but the fact that there is no effort or attempt by our state to simmer down the influx of visitors. It was interesting tonight. I watched the news and I saw a statement basically from the lieutenant governor telling the local residents, right? The message went out to the local residents, don't travel if you're not vaccinated. Don't travel. Don't leave the state. It's very dangerous. He used another term. I can't remember what it was. But he said, don't. It's dangerous to leave the state if you're not vaccinated. But where's the message to the visitors saying, don't come to Hawaii if you're not vaccinated? Why is it that everything is geared back to the residents, Charlie? That's what's really irritating me. And, as I look at the numbers, it's like the fifth day, triple digits. We've had a few deaths. Hospitals now are filling up. Like, Charlie, it's like you and I, two of the not two of the most intelligent people on the planet, but two local boys that have no medical experience,
Mhm.
except you worked in a medical examiner's office, so you have a little bit more than I do. But we saw this coming a year ago. We saw this coming 6 months ago. We made the statement that this would happen. We talked about why Hawaii was different from California and Texas and Oregon and everywhere else because of the hospital capacity. That was the one reason that we were screaming and yelling to be careful because the hospital capacities. And that is what we're seeing now. And now you watch the news and, oh, it's a fifth day of triple digits. And now our healthcare people are concerned. Well, then you guys should all be fired because you should have been concerned when the governor was talking about opening up restrictions, when the governor was talking about allowing people to come in from anywhere without a vaccine, or if you had a vaccine, then there was check, no check at all. So don't come now and say we're concerned. It's kind of late now because the virus is now inside the community. And, I posted today about the testing that, we have a lot of local residents that travel and they come home and they get a test. They take a test because they feel they want to be safe for their families, for their kupuna, for the families and the friends. And so they go get a test. Not all, but many of them do. Some of our local residents, they get sick and they go to the doctor, they get tested, they become a positive, and we were able to, through contact tracing and word of mouth, isolate. But these visitors are coming in, no tests, potentially some fake vaccine records, or even coming in positive, even though they're vaccinated with a valid vaccination card, and unknowingly spreading this virus. But no mention of that. It's all targeting locals, whether they're residents, returning residents from trips, or the new buzzword, unvaccinated. This is the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Guys, what we're seeing are the symptoms of a problem of our unsafe travels program. That's what we're seeing. That's my opinion. Again, totally unscientific, but this is just common sense. When we opened up safe travels or unsafe travels, when we decided to let people in with only a vaccination card, the cases spike. They will try to get you to believe that it's 4th of July because it's the locals, right? The gatherings. They don't even mention the visitors. So, or the returning residents. So anyway, that's my rant for the night.
Well, two things I had. Opinion one. If I were running for office in 2022, and it was predicated upon the fact that I needed the voters of Hawaii, I could tell you right now, I wouldn't go and publicly beat up on the local voters. That would be totally ludicrous of me to do. This individual decides to go that route, and he forgets that when he needs the votes, it will come from the local people and, or local residents, I should say. And I'm sure there are going to be some that's going to vote for him because they feel he's doing the right thing. But to constantly bash our local community, right? Why don't you come on? You know, I learned something very, very important in one of the classes that I took. That is, when you train someone, you don't tell the people, you don't tell that person, hey, you know what? You're not going to pass already. You failed all of this. That's why, you know, go back, study, learn. You don't talk like that to them. What you tell them is, you know, up to this point, you did very, very well. There's just some modifications that needs to be made. And I'm sure you and I, we can work through it. You give them positive reinforcements, right? To continue to believe in you so you can guide them in the right direction so they can do better the next time, right?
Mm-hmm.
This individual doesn't do anything like, he doesn't make me feel any better that, okay, so when you say that these are the unvaccinated, I know you want to lift, you want to lift everything, but we're supposed to achieve certain numbers. How do you achieve lifting everything when we are still getting numbers the way we're getting? What that tells me is that your number count is wrong and there are more unvaccinated people than what you think. That's what I'm thinking. Because if that wasn't the case, then we shouldn't be getting these kind of cases pop up in the 80s, the 90s, the 100s, the 130s, okay? We shouldn't be getting those kind of numbers, but we are. So I think the sooner you accept the fact that there's a big group of citizens that have not been vaccinated, okay, for one reason or another, you shouldn't do a blanket statement and blame unvaccinated people because I'm sure the numbers are not telling us, well, how many of those who are vaccinated actually tested positive as well. Mm-hmm. You don't share that. Everything is hit for this, hit for that, you know. I think of hippo like hippopotamus because it's just been, you just throw hippo around like it's a $10 bill. Hippo, hey, hippo, hooray, you know. But, you know, be honest with the people. Tell the people exactly so that we can make educated decisions. But it's almost like saying, don't worry, gang. Things are not going to happen. But when they do happen, then you come back and say, well, you're on your own. I mean,
yeah, it's your fault.
Yeah, it's your fault.
It's your fault.
You should have known better. So please share, as Brother Mel has the share sign. But I would like to share one thing. My wife did come in contact with someone who possibly, we don't know, because nobody said anything to us. But just through the coconut wireless, my wife could have come in contact with somebody who may have been positive. And as a precaution, she went down to go get tested and she came out negative. So I'm very happy for that. But you see,
awesome.
But you see, Lieutenant Governor, we are responsible people, whether you tell us or not. We are responsible enough to go get tested. Whether that information is valid or not, we still gonna get tested. Now, you may tell us that maybe that was the right thing to do or that was the wrong thing to do. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you say. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've always said this at the end of our show. We give you the information and we just want to make sure you're prepared. One of the information we're giving out that if you don't know for sure, go get tested. It's free. Go get tested so you can have that peace of mind. So right now, my wife and I, we have that peace of mind. Okay? Now you might
Well, I'm
say,
glad to hear that, Charlie. I'm glad to hear that.
people might say, well, Uncle Charlie, you never go get tested. And the fact of the matter is, because I've been working so many hours, I don't know when I could have come in contact with my wife to even be if she was infected, but she's not. I've been working so many hours, I just err on the side of caution. I come home every night, and you see, that's why we always said you got to do this very religiously. Before you come in the house, take off your clothes, start scrubbing up before you step foot in your home. Because why? Your home is your temple. You don't contaminate it every day. You may be tired. You might have a hard time lifting your leg up to take off your shoe, but you got to take one step at a time and you do it. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we are blessed on Kauai because you can go to the convention hall during the day between 8 and 3, I guess, or 8 and 3:30 or whatever, and get a free test. I went on Friday. Um, I'd come in contact with a guy who had just come back from Florida, and he was coughing he was just coughing and coughing. He wasn't covering his mouth. So I went and got tested. Going to get tested again. It's there for us to use. I think we need to take advantage of that. It's free and it's painless. And when I went, there was no one there, just me. Zero people were there except for the workers. That was it. Um, my story, my son went to the MMA fights in Oregon, in Vegas, unvaccinated. His buddy who he went with tested positive, is sick. And my son went and got tested, came out negative, thank God. But yesterday, I was so excited to hear that he went and got his first shot yesterday because now it became real. A very, very close friend of his, NFL football player, got sick. Didn't just test positive, sick, and is on treatment with his doctor right now as we speak. So my son realized that I wasn't just blowing smoke, that in fact there was a genuine concern for him, and so he went and got his first shot. My daughter woke up yesterday morning, blazing, burning throat, headache, and a fever.
Ooh.
I I told her you got COVID, so she went and got tested. Her test results came back negative. It was weird. Negative for COVID, negative for strep. This is in Oregon. I talked to her today, and as soon as she gets better, she's going to go get her vaccine. So, folks, this is the deal, and we got everyone under 12 cannot get a vaccine. Now, the 11-year-old, 10-year-old that's watching TV and hearing all the negative talk about people that aren't vaccinated is going to impact them because it's not their choice. They can't get a vaccine, even if they wanted one. So this tone that's going out to the unvaccinated, blaming everything on the unvaccinated. You got everyone that's under 12 cannot. You have people that are facing cancer. They are going through treatment or suffering from other immunity damaging diseases that cannot take the vaccine. You got people with allergies that cannot take vaccines. You see, there's some people that have chosen not to for religious reasons or whatever it is. This is what I'm trying to get at. We have reached the peak of vaccinations, and you can put commercials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're gonna change very few people's minds at this stage. They've already made up their minds. And to go out and put the vaccinated people against the unvaccinated people, I think is wrong. I think it's wrong. I think we be real and be honest with the people. Let them know exactly what is going on and stop sugarcoating this crap and letting the people know that it's in their best interest to get vaccinated. But contests, listen, Charlie, what is one vegetable that you don't eat, that you don't like, that you despise?
Kale.
Okay, good example, kale. Now, we know through studies that kale is a superfood. It's very healthy. But Charlie, if I called you 3 times a day, Charlie, you change your mind. Charlie, you try to kill. Charlie, you change your mind.
To
Bro,
make
I just had him. You know, Charlie, I mean, at some point, you know what? You're just telling people, shut up.
no,
I
no,
already
no.
told you.
That's not me, Mel. If you were to call me 3 times a day, Gail, I would probably politely change my number so you can never get a hold of me again.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, Charlie, you exactly my point. You know, in the beginning, okay, granted, tell everybody, you know, whatever. But you know, giving somebody a chance to win, oh come on, man. I mean, really, everybody knows, right? Everybody by now knows that vaccinated people are protected much more than the unvaccinated. 99% of the people that are getting sick are unvaccinated. We know all of that, and they keep pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. And we'll do some pounding tonight too. But the bottom line is this: we are at a point, I believe, and Dr. Kapono, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm hoping he can chime in on this. But we are at a point that is going to be very difficult to move that needle of the percentage of vaccinated people. So the fact remains, we'll not get to 70%. And the variant is rapidly exploding throughout the country. Every state tonight on the news, every single state has increases in virus in positive cases. 50 states now today. So we have tried, and we continue to try to focus on the benefits of vaccination, but we're at a plateau. And how do we get to that next level? And for those that choose not to be vaccinated, for whatever reason, again, we respect everybody's choice, but for those that decide we're not going to take the shot, or those that cannot take the shot, how do we keep them safe? How do we keep them safe? Anyway, Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen, thank you very much. Backed by popular demand. You're one of the most sought after guests on our show, bro.
Oh, thank you. Aloha. Good to be back. Flattering.
Hey,
Just
man,
doing what I can.
I call them as I see them, man. I mean,
Well,
it is what it is.
let me pose this response, and then I'll pose a question to Dr. Chong. You know, we talk about the vaccines, right? And I think, you know, we're at a saturation point now that we probably hit the peak of what we can get people vaccinated on. So, Doc, my question is this. This virus has shown its ugly head, and it's reared many times, right? Came in the form of the California variant, the Brazilian, you know, the list goes on, the UK. Now it's the Delta and the Delta P, right? With everyone that's been vaccinated and how this thing is just floating amongst the population, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to morph into something that will find the path of least resistance, right? It's going to shoot that way. And then probably it'll start to develop into something else that we don't know yet. And is that a fair thing to say?
I think what we should be saying is it could. You know, I mean, that's really what we're seeing. I mean, there's an intelligence in the simplicity of viruses, which is a trial and error intelligence. You know, they get these billions of trial and errors with a system that is error prone, but that really just means there's mutations. So, you know, we're using our brains, you know, we're using science, we're using observation to try to get ahead of this virus, but it's adapting too. You know, I mean, just like we adapt our knowledge, it adapts too. And like you're saying, I'm uneasy about this state where we're close to herd immunity, but we're not there. It's sort of like playing with fire. We're creating an environment where somewhat we're kind of like encouraging the virus to exploit our weaknesses. You know, our weaknesses are right now that we don't have enough people that are agreeing to be vaccinated, but also we haven't, you know, vetted vaccines in children. And so the children are going to be a vulnerable population. So to me, the hottest topic right now, other than, you know, what I've been putting most of my effort into is, can we get our vaccination numbers higher? Is school is coming. You know, we're trying to send our kids back to school and do as much in-person learning as we can. You know, a lot of children did not thrive under distance learning over the past year. I would say the majority did not. And so, if that's the pool of people that the virus can infect, it naturally selects for the virus that can infect those people or the decisions of the people surrounding them. So we have to keep on adapting. I've got my knockout COVID shirt on, but that's what I'm kind of looking at it like. How can we knock this thing out and get our rates higher? But I think probably the most important topic for discussion on top of vaccinations is how can we protect our children as we start preparing to send them back to school. And you guys probably heard today the American Academy of Pediatrics put out a statement about masking that contradicts what the CDC is saying. They're saying indoors, everyone should mask in schools. And I agree with that statement.
Well, Doc, we're hearing, right? We know that the under 12 cannot be vaccinated. We know that they're very vulnerable with this variant. They're very vulnerable. And we know this. There is no, it's not in dispute. The numbers don't lie. The cases don't lie. We know that the CDC said, okay, we can ease up on the masking and all of that, but we're seeing states now, Vegas or counties, Vegas and California starting to come back and say, whoa, it's time, we're gonna have to put back our masks. But when you listen to our DOE or whoever is making the decisions in our state, they are expecting our kids to go back into an environment with poor ventilation, without vaccines for the under 12, and potentially not wearing masks with a 3 feet social distance area. Isn't that a recipe for disaster that's going to run through our schools and end up shutting them down anyway?
I'm concerned. Yeah.
I'm the layperson, man. I don't have any kids, but if I did have 12 and my kid would not be going to school. And I know it's going to piss off a lot of people watching, but it's not, it's the state's responsibility to keep our kids safe. And by letting them go back to school, first of all, 6 feet minimum. Second of all, masks and ventilation. We had a year and a half to work on ventilation. We haven't. So I'm concerned, Doc, with this variant affecting that under 12 age group, we are heading for some serious problems, in my opinion. Non-medical, non-scientific opinion.
Well, can I make one statement? I'm going to let the doctor chime in. Having been part of the response for DOE when there's a breakout, I've been tasked with disinfecting the schools. I will say this: I believe those schools that have been attacked by this virus, just by the student population that were affected, I think the teachers, the staff, they're much more tuned in now. And I'm thinking things are going to be a little different because they know the transmissibility, especially with this Delta variant, it's just so highly contagious. I think they're really tuned in. And that's my read on it, because they have done a really good job. I would have expected during that lull that we had that probably, when some of the kids came back, especially summertime, that the kind of activities, we would have seen more, but we didn't see it. Now with this, I think the DOE, and I just pray to God that, the moment they catch an inkling that something's happening, they put a full court press on it and start isolating them in the classroom. Because if not, then definitely what you and Mel have said, it definitely is just going to take off like wildfire. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think anybody wants to face that. I don't think anybody wants to be a part of it. And I don't think anybody wants it to be part of their families either. Because once it takes off, who knows what. So I agree with both you and Mel. Okay, Doc.
Yeah, no, I think it's on everyone's radar. I trust that the individual members within the DOE are going to do the best they can. And I have seen abrupt response to infections. Like I think there was on the west side, there was a kid that was involved in a summer camp. And so, I've been ordering testing for people that were notified based on that. So I'm not saying I don't have any faith in the individuals, but, I agree that it's going to take some leadership to, make sure all of the things are in place. what I agree with about Mel is that we should start kind of looking at our schools as like these vulnerable bubbles, whereas, the way we sort of looked at Kauai, we got to look at our schools that way. That's where there are these pockets of unvaccinated people through no fault of their own, that are going to be around each other. And there's certainly a benefit to in-person learning. So I don't blame the efforts to try to get our kids back to in-person learning. But I think we have to think about what can we do? So ventilation, distancing, masking, and I think there's a lot of interest in advocating for safer measures within the schools from a lot of people. Lee Evelyn is another one that's kind of getting back into advocating for that. I've been learning a little bit more about this. It's the Pacific Islands Alliance Against COVID-19. So they've been doing some good work, I think, mostly in Waianae. So, the message is getting out there, but it's still a vulnerable population. I think I was listening to you guys a little bit before I came on the show. And I think, the part that I think could be stressed is that adults that are around children need to be taking this very seriously about what could you possibly be exposing your children to. My friend Cody, who's been on the show, Cody Kimura, went to Las Vegas and, he talked about the experience there. And he jokingly said, if you go to Las Vegas and you're not vaccinated, you're coming back with COVID. Whether you like it or not. Now, I can't say I have the stats to back that up, but in my personal experience, anecdotally, that's what I'm seeing is people unvaccinated going to Vegas, coming back through safe travels and thinking they're okay. I mean, there's just, if you have any symptoms and you're not vaccinated, you come back from Vegas, there's a really good chance you got COVID. So I think there should be a lot of attention given to the household members of children that are in school and what decisions they're making, especially if they're not vaccinated. And if we want to keep our kids safe, we have to look at those schools like this pristine, safe bubble and do everything we can not to let them be infiltrated and not be the one that infects the child that we send to school and spreads it to other people. God forbid that happens, but it really does seem like it's a setup for that to happen with the numbers that we're seeing. Presumably this is the Delta variant. I think all of us are surprised that the numbers are as high as they are, even though we know we're not at herd immunity levels. We have a pretty high vaccination rate. So, less than half of the population is really vulnerable to catching, severe COVID. And yes, we could spread it to other people, but it's probably not, to the degree it was before. But now we're seeing that, these rules that we had in place really did protect us, because even with the vaccination rates that we have, we're still seeing these high numbers. We're seeing a resurgence, so if we have a group of kids or group of people who are kids in a setting together, it's just a risky situation. And the best thing we can do is try to take, our individual responsibility for our families to protect them and, pressure the DOE appropriately or the DOH, but, they have their own politics between those departments. And I think, all of us know it's not like we as individuals can just change what the policy is. But I know a lot of people are paying attention to it and trying to put pressure appropriately for safety measures.
And I think that's the frustration because, the last go around when kids went to school and there was cases popping up, it wasn't the variant. It wasn't the highly contagious variant that we have today. We're talking about a population that's 100% unvaccinated, the 11 and below, 100% unvaccinated in an area. And I don't know if either of you have ever participated in a classroom with youngsters. I was blessed to have that opportunity once. They put elected officials in classrooms for the whole day. And I was lucky enough to get an elementary school class. And I got to tell you, that was more stressful than my worst day on a police force. It's hard to keep these kids together and attention-wise, but not physically. It's going to be tough for these kids. And it's going to take just one instance of this variant getting into a classroom, and then it's going to spread. And that, I think, is the frustration because it's 2 weeks away or maybe even less for some schools. I think some schools may have even started. But there is no real plan that has been put out there for the public. And, I want to ask you this, Doc, and it's kind of off topic, but my point is the same, the contagiousness of this virus, of this variant. We're seeing now the Olympics are being affected, being touched. And I know there's going to be a whole lot more cases, but we see how this somewhat protected group of people who was on a COVID protocol before they left for Japan gets to Japan, gets kind of sequestered and guided to their transportation to the village, and they can't see no one, they can't talk to no one, they can only go to training and back, and very, very tight controls. And all of a sudden, these cases are popping up. I'd like to hear your thought on, number one, this variant is very contagious, but between point A, which is the countries or the airports that these people left from, and Japan, I'm sure there were many airports involved, many flights for some of these people. Should we be concerned that a lot of these cases may have been transferred at airports or on an airplane? Because the protocols were pretty strict for these athletes, and yet still managed to get a bunch of these cases on the ground.
You know, I just read about some of these cases today there, but there's multiple ones, right? Of the athletes. Did you catch whether they're vaccinated or not? These athletes were vaccinated?
They haven't said.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I would believe that it's majority of them are not. I mean, I know they spoke to one of the swimmers, American swimmers, and he said he's not taking it because as an athlete, he needs to control what goes in his body, and he doesn't know what impacts it'll have, and it could be negative and hurt his performance at the Olympics. Well, that's a great role model. You know, I'm sure he doesn't take any supplements from GNC that isn't approved by the FDA. I'm sure he's, only water. I'm sure he only drinks water all day long. But, I've seen that interview probably 4 times already on TV, the media. Now, how many sets of eyeballs on youngsters and athletes have seen that interview and tell themselves, see, if that Olympian is afraid to take the shot because it's going to impact his performance, and I ain't taking the shot. And it's not, the collective effort is missing from everyone, I think.
But that statement alone it counters to what it originally stated. He said he wanted to control what he puts in his body, right? Mm-hmm. When you get COVID, you have no control of it, and it'll be in your body. So how can you control that?
I didn't realize that that's the interview they gave. I agree with your criticism of it.
Oh,
I mean, if I was in charge of the Olympic Committee, I would basically say you're required to be vaccinated to participate in this competition, or have a medical exemption. Have something legitimate about why you can't be vaccinated. From your physician. If not for the greater good, just for the potential that it's going to ruin the Olympics. If you have the virus and you transmit it to other people, athletic sporting events are a high risk activity. We're all breathing and spitting and sweating. Everything's going everywhere during those. So I'm surprised he didn't require.
Did you hear today, Toyota pulled out. Toyota pulled all their ads today from the Japan Olympics because they were not comfortable with moving forward with the games with these positive cases popping up. How, I don't know what it is, but can you imagine how much millions of dollars just left because of that? I applaud Toyota. I applaud Toyota for doing that. They did not want to be associated with an event that was not going to protect and have some safe protocols. In other words, they're basically saying to hold off, but they didn't. So they pulled it today. Unreal.
Right, and the Olympics are in Japan. Toyota pulling out of the Olympics in Japan. I mean, that's crazy. I didn't hear that.
It sends a message, and I think that message is the message that they need to be sharing, not the Olympic swimmer that is saying that this thing is going to hurt his performance.
Yeah.
Another thing that is kind of and I do want to apologize that I'm eating in front of you guys, but I tell you, dry aqua is the best. But one thing I noticed is that if you look at all the different news agencies leading up to this Olympics, they've been covering they've covered a lot of the dissension amongst the people of Japan. Sometimes you have Olympics where it shows that, it's an economy booster, right? brings in all of these monies. This is one of the first time I've seen it on the news where there is a divide, and you've got people from Japan actually protesting against the Olympics, out and out protesting, and it's tough. It's tough. And so you got people against people, and those are one of the things I think that's sad. But I think on each side there's a strong conviction of why they feel that way. And all I can say is this: we've had Dr. Miskovich on, and being touted as a so-called tester for a lot of these sports entities, right? He knows what, and so do you, Doc, because you've been a successful soccer coach for Waimea. You know the physical contact that's made out on the field and off the field. You know that when the testosterone level gets up there, everybody giving each other a high five, and everything is so exciting. It's not where you score a goal and you just run and you just air hug, air five. You're not going to do that. That's just not going to take place. So I think what I'm trying to say is the probability of just knowing that the transmissibility of this virus now is what? More contagious than it's ever been. And then, it doesn't take much to spread that viral load, once it gets a hold of you. And those are the kind of thing that kind of worries me. So now when you bring it onto a larger platform like the Olympics, boy, if something goes wrong, isn't that going to be front and center if something bad was to happen?
Yeah, to try to get back to answering Mel's question, I don't know, I wouldn't be comfortable implying that they caught the virus through travel or airplanes or whatever. I don't know what decisions these people are making. I'd imagine they're also training, and I don't know who they're around when they're training or practicing. But the point there is, there are so much resources available to these athletes to keep them safe, I would say essentially unlimited in comparison to what we have. So when the Olympics are having problems and they're in a country like Japan, where I don't know for sure, but probably 80 to 90% of the people are willing to follow mask wearing mandates or whatever rules they are. It's not like, the United States where we have this big rift of people that think that they shouldn't ever have to do those things and they're having problems. It should be a warning to everybody else that, we're not out of this yet, and completely dropping down our guard is probably going to result in some negative consequences.
Mm.
Yeah, I think the Olympics is a good snapshot of one event one event, whether it's a sporting event or if it's a weekend, highly traveled weekend or whatever it is, how quickly this thing can change the landscape. And, for people that, even the Japanese people that are outside protesting about, I saw one sign that said, this Olympic Games are going to kill the poor. COVID is going to kill the poor. They're very concerned because, they don't have the vaccines like we do. Many of them want the vaccine, can't get them. And they're seeing it. They're seeing what's happening. That even, again, as I said earlier, a very tight, strict Olympic protocol, COVID protocol, and this variant still can get through. This virus can get through. So I think people should pay attention. Our decision makers need to start looking at these types of events and say, wow, could it be that, we're seeing a similar consequence here in Hawaii? We don't have the Olympics, but we have a bunch of people traveling into our venue, which is our state. Yeah, we don't need the Olympics. We get people coming in and our numbers go up. And I don't think that our numbers are going up solely because residents are returning from Vegas with COVID. And that's kind of the message I'm getting from the media, is it's because of our local families going to Vegas and coming back with the variant. No mention of visitors coming to Hawaii with the variant. And that just is very hard for me to accept and take. Yeah.
I don't like it either, Mel. You and I are completely aligned as far as the scapegoating completely on locals. I I have to admit, I try to focus on what I can control at this point, though. I mean, I think that, we pushed hard to keep our population safe, and the appetite for making, safer protocols with travel has waned a lot, compared to what it was back, before we re-entered safe travels in April. And so that's where I don't mean to say that there is no, that the blame is not being somewhat unfairly put on our residents, but, we do care about each other. Our children are the ones who are in school. So I do think that it's worth, stating that, we do have it within our power to take extra precautions, if we're traveling, if that's what you choose to do right now. And we should look at the schools like Leah Evans called this program tiny bubbles, but it's sort of like tiny bubbles, so don't be the person that exposes those tiny bubbles to risk. And I know probably everybody here is getting sick of hearing about vaccinations, but, we are making some pushes to try to get that 12 and above age group in particular vaccinated before we go back to school. I think you guys have probably talked about it already, but there's the Kukui Grove Back to School Bash this Saturday, the 24th, from 9:30 to 12:30, and they're going to offer all the vaccines. July 31st, I'm working with CC Kilma and the Marshallese Association of Kauai. They're doing a whole event for their folks, but we're going to be offering vaccinations for the public from 10 to 2:30 as well. We're going to offer Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer so we can get into that 12-year-old age group. So, in comparison to Japan, we do have an opportunity to vaccinate for free and vaccinate more widely with, what some people call the Ferrari and the Lamborghinis of the vaccine world. So those are the things that we can do. I'm frustrated about all the blame, like you're saying too, but these are the people that I think we can count on, our residents. I think we can count on them to take more responsibility if we get out that message about the risk posed to schools, visitors, less likely to take as much responsibility. And this is not their home. So I don't mean to, say that there is no blame. And yeah, part of me too is looking at the cases, and almost all of it is returning residents since July 8th happened when we changed the tier, but now we're seeing these visitors again. And, you pointed out too, returning residents, that doesn't mean that the returning residents made some horrible decisions or something where they were, where they're coming from, but they're traveling and they're mixing with other people too, who might not be making the best decisions.
Well, I think Mel and I talked about it the last time, and that is because local residents, this is their home. So if they feel the slightest off or something that's not right, they go get tested, right? And that's how they're finding out. These visitors, I'm sure some of them are not feeling the greatest since they landed, but they know what to expect. If they test positive, there goes their vacation, right? I mean,
sure.
That's one way of looking at it. So.
And we can always look back at Kauai's limited experiences that residents were generally about 10 times more likely to go seek out testing after, arriving for whatever reason. Very limited data, but we have, something to back that statement up. It's not like we just made that up out of the blue.
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason why we would question history, right? I mean, history repeats itself, and you just think for a moment when testing was required, whether it was required to get here or it was required to get out of a bubble, a resort bubble. You remember when all of the cases were relatively or related to mainland travel? Remember, because they tested on the mainland, they got here, got their result, bam, positive. Or they came to the bubble, after 3 days, they went to the convention hall, bam, positive. There is no reason to think that that's not happening today. The only thing that's missing is the testing. So we're not catching the people coming across. Remember, there's still a large percentage of people that are coming into Hawaii unvaccinated and quarantining. We still have a huge chunk. And the last number I heard, they said it was about half. It was a while ago, it's old data. I don't know what it is today. But even if it's 40% of the people coming in are unvaccinated and agreeing to quarantine, we don't have the quarantine enforcement like we did. We don't have the benefit of that second test to identify these people. So it's scary. And that is why we're not seeing mainland visitor positives because we're not testing them. We're only testing the locals who are getting sick or because they care about their communities are going to get a second test 4 or 5 days after they get home. That's where these things are coming up. So it's scary. It's very, very scary.
Right. I think another thing to mention is on Kauai, I think we do a pretty good job with contact tracing. So the majority of the cases, I kind of keep my own spreadsheet that I sort of start a new one whenever there's a change in policy. But since we started July 8th, I have it as 34 of the community acquired cases were identified. 34 of 47 community acquired cases were identified through contact tracing. So, it's partly just great job by our Department of Health as far as doing contact tracing. It doesn't mean all those people would have sought out the testing on their own.
Right. Right. And that's a key part of isolating this virus is the contact tracing. But, as I have read in the paper, we've had cases that cannot be tied to a source. They don't know where they got it from. And those are the ones that, how do you know? You just don't. So, yeah, if I got sick and my wife got sick, yeah, Patsy got them from Mel. Where did Mel get them from? I just don't know. Mel travels the island, on a daily basis. I could have got them anywhere. And I think that's where, is it community spread or was it actually virus that was brought in? No one knows. You just, some of these cases, you can only go so many levels and then it ends. There's no way of knowing.
Right. And those are the ones we should be more concerned about. Where did those sporadic cases come from?
Absolutely.
And I think, you can't, if you're having sporadic cases in Kauai, which had very low levels of the virus, I mean, probably still compared to most parts of the mainland low levels, you have to think that there has to be sporadic cases amongst the visitors as well that are not being detected. And that's just a mathematics game. Look at the arrivals and look at our population and you can see how many people you would expect. So I think it's a valid point. But I keep on coming back to, I don't think the travel policy is going to change unless the cases get a lot higher. And I think, the real danger is that opening school is going to be one of those things that really, augments this trend that we're starting to see, this little trend up that's happening, which has been blamed on July 4th. Okay. Fine. Maybe it was July 4th, but holidays happen. We're going to, they're already talking about Labor Day when it's going to happen again. Like that's, a month after school starts, you're going to have another excuse for, why these things are increasing. And I guess I shouldn't say it's an excuse, but, it's sort of a way to, I guess, blame it on something else.
I think the overall motivation or overall goal of our state decision makers is to get everyone vaccinated. That's no secret. They want everybody to get vaccinated. And that's really the only way we're going to quell this virus is to get more people vaccinated and get immunity in the community built up. That's a given. But they resort to these types. I tell you one thing, if in fact, July 4th, today is, what is today? The 19th. So it's been 2 weeks already, right? It's been 2 weeks. If these numbers continue to rise in the next 2 weeks, then we know it's beyond 4th of July. It's beyond 4th of July because we should have isolated the virus if it was in fact due to one weekend of gatherings. But then again, Doc, and you know this, right? This variant, because of the fact that, and again, vaccinated people may be asymptomatic. And while we know that the transmission may be reduced, still is possible. And so we have a lot of virus possibly in the community, and you just don't know if you have it, especially if you've been vaccinated. So that's why we all got to be so careful and be safe. That's when people walking around in groups, no masks. I see a lot of pictures on Facebook. The last couple of weeks, I've seen more friends of mine in close quarters with people without masks. No indoors, no masks, Doc. We're not going to beat this virus if we continue to do things like that. We're just not.
Yeah. You remind me of something that I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight, because I remember coming on the show before and you guys were asking me, who do you trust? Who do you trust? You listen to, and I said, generally I trust Libby Char. I trust Dr. Berryman. I trust Sarah Kimball. I've been generally impressed with their advice. And then I said, oh, the CDC generally as well. I'm starting to realize now, you know, the CDC, I don't think it's that they give necessarily straight up bad advice, but I'm seeing now that maybe they adapted to the political pressures that they got, you know, from the past administration, and now are applying it as well in the new administration. But it seems like they make some statements that are really they have an agenda behind them, you know, like a hope that we're going to get more people vaccinated than what we probably, you know, should have expected. And then it causes problems, you know, like, well, okay, so you don't have to mask indoors if you're vaccinated, but we have no way to verify who's been vaccinated. Okay, maybe you shouldn't make that statement then. It should probably be on the safer side. You know, the other part is the CDC serves the entire United States. They're not making statements that are focused on the unique situation that Hawaii is in. So that's another way the CDC is not going to be serving the state of Hawaii, or, you know, or our Hawaiian Islands. They're serving the nation, and they're thinking that they're making the best statement that they can. But I do agree with you. It seems like there was such a hunger to promote the vaccine and not wanting to undermine the efficacy of the vaccine, not add to vaccine hesitancy, that it's gone a little awry. Something that I thought was valuable from Dr. Berryman, you know, she shared with me that the Department of Health has somewhat learned that when you deal with politicians, not to compromise what your recommendations are because you think it will be more palatable to their agenda, you know, because they need to weigh other factors, right? You know, but Department of Health should be making the healthiest recommendation, and probably the politicians are going to compromise somewhere in between. So I did remember hearing that, you know, we realize that if we give them what we think is a reasonable compromise, then they're going to compromise the reasonable compromise and right. Make it even, you know, further down the line. So we should just say what the safest thing is. And I think you could apply that criticism to the CDC. And that's where you see an academy that's purely focused on medicine, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, contradicting the CDC, you know, and saying that no, you know, like for children, for schools, absolutely, we should just require indoor masking. So I wanted to, you know, put that statement out there. I do think that, you know, we're very different in Hawaii, that there are a lot of people here that I think really got used to wearing masks just in public. And I think there's a lot of people that feel like, why don't we? It's really just not that big of a deal, you know, and it's easier to get into that habit of wearing a mask every time you're in public. And if you realize you're in a situation where you don't need to wear a mask, take it off. Great. You know, but I mean, like right now it's like, okay, I guess we're supposed to all have it off. And so now I think we're getting into more situations where you're like, whoa, wait a minute, where am I now? I probably should be, you know, wearing a mask. Maybe it's not inside, but it's a crowded lanai. You know, none of these people eating food have masks on. Now you know, that guy just sneezed. I think this is a bad situation, you know, so I think there are measures like that where, you know, it would have been better to be more cautious. And, you know, that might be what happens, that we just learn that we have to reinstate some of these precautions. And it sounds like that's kind of what's being called for in some of the other states where they're seeing a quicker rise and they have lower vaccination rates.
Well, you know, I'll tell you one thing. Some mornings I'll get to the airport about 4:45 and leave to go to my office. And sometimes I forget my mask. I tell you, the feeling is a sickening feeling because I should have known better, right? It almost feels as if I got out of my car and realized that when I left the house, all I had was my bibbies on. I forgot to put on my pants. That's what it feels like. But I have to say this, you know, as I watch throughout the day, monitoring the cameras, watching the people come off the planes, and you look at the amount of people for Kauai, let alone I talked to my counterpart on Maui. I said, hey, man, how you guys doing up there? 13,000 people coming in one crack. I mean, can you imagine that number, 13,000? It's like people getting ready to go watch a UH football game at the Aloha Stadium, right?
No, that's 850 go watch the UH game.
Oh, yeah, okay. I said to
Football.
Be correct.
Maybe if the volleyball game.
But, you know, if you think of those kind of numbers, and yet I have to say, the staff has been very, very good because there's this constant playover in the airport about mask mandates. that you need to wear a mask. And our personnel is going around telling everybody, excuse me, you need to put the mask on. And these are, workers on the curb, right? They've got their duty in directing traffic, making sure that nobody gets hurt because there's so much people on the sidewalks, people are walking into the roadway. And yet at the same token, they can pick somebody out of the crowd and say, mask, excuse me, blow the whistle, you need to put on your mask. And for the most part, the traveler does comply. But yet once they get out of the hospital, but once they get out of the airport zone, who knows what's happened? I've seen it down at Halapaki. Big crowds over there, no mask. You don't have to Poipu. Big crowds over there at the Kukuyula, the mall area, no mask. So, it's a hit and miss. But I just hope and pray everybody understands that, aside from the vaccine, the mask, social distancing, that's our best weapon right now. And I don't know if they truly understand that, or if they're coming from a place that just doesn't really give a crap. Because sometimes that's what it seems like.
Well, they're coming from a place that has removed the restrictions. Again, my son and daughter in Oregon, they don't have any restrictions as far as mask wearing. Indoor, out there, doesn't matter. So they're coming from a place that has planted in their brain that you'll be okay if you don't wear a mask. And then they come here and then it's very difficult for them. I just want to go back to what you were talking about, Dr. Behrman and Derek, our mayor, when we started, Mayor Kawakami made it very clear that he was going to rely on the medical experts, that's science. And he did. Dr. Behrman called the shots and Derek didn't argue. He took a lot of heat politically from the business communities, from friends of his that was in the business community, and he stayed the course and kept us safe. But imagine at the state level now, I don't expect you to respond. Charlie probably will, but Doc, I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but imagine for a moment if Josh Green was our governor and not Ige. Safe travels or unsafe travels would have been opened up a whole lot earlier, and we would not have a mask mandate indoors right now for vaccinated people. I gotta give props where it's deserved, and Governor Ige has maintained his course on the indoor masking, and he's again reiterated that he's going to wait till he gets to 70% before he lifts the restrictions. So politics shouldn't even have a part in pandemics, in my opinion. It should be turned over to the medical community to make the decisions, because you hit it right in the head. When you talked about compromise, man, you couldn't have said it more perfectly. The federal government wants everyone to get vaccinated. I think they wanted to meet the goals of the president. I'm going to vaccinate so many people before whatever period of time. So they started incentivizing and doing crazy things to get people to vaccinate. So the best thing, I think, was, hey, give the vaccinated people more freedoms than the unvaccinated. And we're going to urge every unvaccinated person to get vaccinated so they can be treated equally. They never figured out how you're going to tell the difference between a vaccinated person and an unvaccinated person. So I agree with you, Doc. I think maybe not malicious reasons, but definitely not looking out for the safety of everyone. That's just in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it backfired on that. I think, that it was sort of I don't know, maybe a gamble in a way, like they thought that it was going to pan out better. But I think the reality is that a lot of the people that are vaccine hesitant, they're vaccine skeptics, they don't like the CDC anyway, so it's not like they're going to listen just, when the CDC says, oh, you're going to get some benefits from this, maybe, they're going to be even more like, hey, this is weird, like, why are you trying to bribe me and stuff like that. So, I agree with you. It's just that it gets more confusing when the CDC tries to play a political game. And, I would love to say, hey, let's just leave it to health authorities to make those decisions. But let's be real, politicians are going to make their decisions. They have more authority than any, public department of health. And some are going to listen more than others. But it's the role of the Department of Health or the public health authorities to make the safest recommendation, and the politicians can work out, where they're going to land as far as their public policy goes based on those recommendations.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. I like that very much. But this one thing that it bothers me to the point that, and this is kind of like going left of center on this. When we were in a similar position with these kind of numbers, man, we acted fast. So I guess the vaccine is the only denominator that's making everything okay, right? Because if there was no vaccine, the numbers we see now would not be okay. But I am one of those that said, hey, even monkeys fall out of trees. And these are one of the times that, they're like we talked about it earlier. This virus will learn to adapt. And then where do we go? Right?
Right.
The thing is, it's going to be too late. We've already saturated everything into our home base. And now we got to figure out a way how to push it out. And we've never mastered it yet. We've just, the only way we've mastered it is we've reported on it much less than we did before. So it's one of those out of sight, out of mind. We don't think about it, and don't say anything. It'll go away on its own, but it won't, because why? People will get sick, and that's when the uproar starts, when the fatality numbers start to rise. They said, one here, one there. Now we're getting like 3, 4, whatever. Do we want to get to that point? I don't think. I surely don't want to get to that point, because I have loved ones and I care for everybody. And I think those are the kind of things that we're going to be facing shortly. I'm confident, but the only thing that weighs against me is the timeline. How much far out is it pushed? Because that's when people's patience gets tried, right? It gets pushed to the point that they say, you know what? Nothing happened so far, the hell with it. Let's just go, because it's not going to attack us. Then people will be falling like flies. What do you think about that?
Well, you reminded me of the masking discussion. So American culture is, when other people talk about it, I have a little bit of an anthropology background. When other people talk about Americans from the outside, we talk about rugged individualism. But this individualistic thought process is a very American thing, and there's a good side to it, that I believe I can lift myself up by my bootstraps. I can rely on myself to be self-sufficient. Imagine sort of like these frontier people that go into some place without any friends, just their resources, foreign place, and make a living. Well, never mind that they probably stole some of that stuff from some Native Americans, but that's the image that we like to think about ourselves, I think, as Americans. But it backfires when it comes to things like public health in a pandemic and mask wearing. So there's a lot of that feeling like, I don't want to be a sheep, I don't want to be a minion, I don't want to wear this mask. A mask takes away my identity. You can't even see me as an individual. I'm just a number. I'm like the Japanese tourists that are all get on the bus together, all come off, all walk around together like they're just the same person. And I think the same way that kind of comes through when it comes to the vaccines, because once the vaccines were offered, now it becomes, well, I think our politicians don't feel as responsible for mandating policy that protects us, because we all have, well, other than our children, and people with medical conditions, we have the individual choice to protect ourselves. And if we don't, then more likely to catch COVID. I can sympathize with that feeling. I mean, I have a little bit of that feeling too. That's the consequence. If you're not going to do it, you're going to catch COVID. If you're in a whole group of people that do risky things and you choose not to get vaccinated, you're going to catch COVID. And I hope you don't get the complications. I hope you're not the 1 in 10 people that become a long hauler, even if you don't, suffer, the worst complication of death or other serious illnesses. But I think that's part of what has driven policy now. The policy decisions are, there is a better alternative to a lot of these things like travel restrictions and masking. And now it becomes more of an individual citizen's decision what to do. So I don't feel so, responsible that I have to make mandates that are going to protect people.
Hey, Doc, we got a few minutes left. I'm going to toss a bunch of our viewer questions in one big question, and
Sure.
You can kind of touch on it. And it's the booster. What are your thoughts on the booster? Also, for those, we're hearing about the Pfizer booster, but for those that have taken the Johnson & Johnson or the Moderna, what's your thoughts on the booster? Also, should we be expecting new and better vaccines going down the future, as well as possibly new variants that may be even more elusive or more contagious than this one? So kind of a big question, but however you can give us an overview.
Yeah. Quick before I answer the question, and I wanted to circle back a little to what you pointed out, Mel, about policymaking, and Dr. Kimball and Dr. Char. One of the things that I think is also can really bothersome throughout our policymaking is, when it's unclear whether a doctor is behaving as a politician or as a doctor. I mean, and that's bothered a lot of doctors, where it gets mixed between. When you are working as the Department of Health, that's your job as the Department of Health. And so I think we've had added confusion because there's this other person in the mix that is in between, those two roles. So I wanted to mention that, at least to give a little bit of, I think, credence to what you were pointing out. As far as the boosters, I'm like everyone else. I want to hear when we need to get it. I just heard my friend Jordan Lee, who's a critical care doc at Queens. He just revealed that he caught COVID, and it sounds like it's pretty mild symptoms or asymptomatic. But he's around people with COVID all the time. The most stringent precautions. I'm almost certain he was one of the first people to get the Pfizer vaccine, like myself, one of the earliest ones, probably back in December. So I don't know what to say other than that I'm interested to hear. And, when I heard his case, I'm a little bit more like, okay, first one to get it. That means maybe one of the first ones to have waning immunity. John Dworkin, I watched his show when he was on here, and he shared some of that interesting stuff from Queens about how high the titers were of different people, post-vaccine. I don't have an answer for you. I would not be surprised if to see a recommendation to get a booster before winter comes around, when we worry about flu and other infections like this becoming worse. But I don't have an answer for you beyond that. As far as the other vaccines, I think of Pfizer and Moderna as sort of being, they're like Ferrari and Lamborghini, like they're almost the same. So I think that probably if there's going to be a recommendation for a Pfizer booster, then there probably will be a recommendation for a Moderna booster. Johnson & Johnson is sort of the third, the outlier. Hard to say. I know there have been more cases of people getting COVID post Johnson & Johnson. And it doesn't mean that it's a useless vaccine. I think there's still protection from severe disease. I wonder what people are going to say about what we should do with people after Johnson & Johnson. Should they get another Johnson & Johnson? Is it better to boost them with another dose of another vaccine? I haven't read anything, and I don't know how to answer that question. As far as the variants go, my guess would be that the people that are making the vaccines are going to keep on trying to stay ahead of the variants, similar to how we do with a seasonal flu vaccine, monitoring which strains are the most prevalent worldwide, and whether they're exhibiting vaccine escape from whichever vaccines we're looking at. And then they'll probably be looking at the mutations in the spike protein and see if they can make a vaccine that is going to be less likely to be evaded by the variants that are coming out. Well, that's the best answer I can give, but I don't know of any specifics.
Roger Dodger. Awesome. Yeah, I kind of, going back to what you mentioned about Dr. Char and Dr. Kimball, and, they've kind of kept their all the interviews that I've ever seen, it's pretty much close, or they stick to the medicine, the science, the what they're seeing. And I gotta believe that they would like to say more, and yet for some reason they're uh, they're 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 behaving. That's just my observation. Uh, the lieutenant governor, and if you go back the last several months, all you heard from the lieutenant governor was how uh, how if you got the vaccine, you'd reach total immunity, and that in fact, he claims herd immunity is at 60%. I mean, a lot of the things that he say goes against. Again, Doc, you don't have to respond. I'm just venting really because of hearing your comments. Is that a lot of the messaging that was coming out of the lieutenant governor's office by himself on the morning news. He has a show almost every morning, was not in line with what the medical experts throughout the world or throughout our country was saying. In fact, even our own state experts. And, we talked about this on several occasions where that messaging was causing some issues for many of our residents. I know for our viewers, because obviously they share with us. But if you watch the news and it kind of minimizes the potential dangers of the virus, or the variant. And I think that was part of the problem when you cannot differentiate your role as a doctor versus a lieutenant governor. And I don't want to, bash the lieutenant governor, but I'm calling it as I see it, that in fact, much of what he said, number one, just turned out not to be true. And it was counter to what a lot of the experts were saying. So the messages were not cohesive. It wasn't together with what the governor was trying to say. So, we will see how this thing all pans out. And I hope we can get through this quickly and with very minimal death and serious illness. So it's upon us to do what we need to do to keep everybody safe. I think that's kind of the thoughts that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I can share that the circles that I kind of associate with doctors are, some more than others, are just really at the heart of it, really bothered by that. I guess what we would say is perceived compromise of what our role is as trusted professionals, and that it can undermine trust in doctors overall, when a doctor tries to play multiple roles but still sort of puts on that doctor hat, and so that's I think the bothersome thing with a lot of people that I talk to. I mean, and it's a tough job. I've pointed that out before. I mean, I would have a really hard time mixing those two competing ideals, if I was in that position too. And I think you made a good point about Libby Char and Sarah Kimball. They publicly, they're probably saying the right thing, because it's not their role to be playing a political game. I mean, it's their role to provide the best advice. And probably, I'm pretty confident that in private meetings, they are, being straight up with people and providing the advice that they think they should. I mean, I think when you see the difference, or how it at least seems like Governor Ige has other things going on in his mind than what we're seeing, from the lieutenant governor. It's probably because he's hearing from other people that are being staunch about, their advice. So I don't necessarily blame those guys for doing that. I think that's their role. It's not their role to be political. It's their role to make the best advice they can. And they're going to be less effective if they step on political toes of other people. So it's a tough job, but I guess I don't really blame them for that. I think that they've still overall done a good job. And I feel pretty sure that behind the scenes, they're representing the safe viewpoint.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, oh man, that was a quick hour, Charlie. Charlie, you look like you're in deep thought, bro.
Well, I'll be straightforward and tell you one thing. I've never been one to play the politics, even though we've done it several times, full court press. But it's, my position is got to be principle oriented. And when it comes to life-saving measures, the same way I teach my students when they apply CPR, you got to be principled and disciplined. And that if you can't do it, the best thing you can do is get on the phone and call 911. You know, don't give the illusion that you can and you let precious time go by. Step back, call 911 and let somebody else get in there and start working on somebody that's down on the ground. Because, you know, a lot of times it's gonna, you know, everybody wants that rah-rah feeling, right? Sometimes that rah-rah feeling can be very hurtful. It can be very painful because when they're supposed to be attacking the root cause, they're not. They're taking people on a different path. And I think that's what you were getting to, Mel. That is, we've heard it before. I, like you, trusted, you know, I'm not a doctor, but yet I have to trust the doctor. And I have to trust what an individual says. But when that same individual starts to go left of center, you know, I'm not going to say anything nasty. I'm just going to say, well, they chose that path. I'll go this way. Because we've talked to many other doctors, including our esteemed guest that's on tonight, have a different point of view, and that seems to be lining up with what a lot of in the medical field seems to think is the right path to take. So we're very, very fortunate to have him on tonight. Thank you for letting me know, Mel, because brother, you put this show on tonight all by yourself. I just came along for the ride.
Well, you know, Doc, we were getting to the point, Charlie and I, that we were basically repeating ourselves. And we kind of made the decision that we would go do a once a week show instead. And right after we decided on that, man, the spike started happening again. We've been getting a lot of messages from people and a lot of people tuning in and we're not on. And, you know, it's probably back to where we need to be on more often when we have people like yourself. You were the first one that came to my mind this morning when I said, you know, we got to go back on the air. We need to go back on the air and update the people. And you were just the first one that came to my mind. And within 3 minutes and 17 seconds, you responded to my email and said, when? I can make myself available when? I said, tonight. And the second response was a little longer, but it came back within 5 minutes and 12 seconds and said, tonight works. So, Doc, I appreciate you coming on. I did want to give you some time. We usually let the guests share. Tell us what's going on at Huolalahui or with your clinic. And I know you mentioned the vaccinations, but take a moment and talk about what you guys are doing now. And also want to, before I turn it over, Melissa Bolton wants us to honor Dr. Lee from Queens Medical Center. Dr. Lee has never left his watch in the pandemic and has been working his butt off. So I'd love to have Dr. Lee on the show, Melissa, if you can get him on. But we appreciate all of you docs and nurses and staff at the hospitals. We read yesterday or today that the hospitals are filling up. They're starting to see the beds getting filled, which is what Charlie and I have been saying for months. It's going to happen. But yeah, Dr. Lee, mahalo nui, mahalo nui. So Doc, what's going on and what do you want to share with our viewers before we sign off?
Well, I guess I really got to, show off a little bit. This is our shirt, Knockout COVID, Protect Kauai, Get Jabbed. So that's really what we're trying to do to fill our role. And hopefully keep this pandemic under control before we go back to school. There are so many, basically every Saturday we're having a vaccination clinic in different areas. The most important to share right now, which is one of them, which is not ours, is that back to school bash the next Saturday at Kukui Grove. And that one is going to be 9:30 to 12:30, all the vaccines. The best place to find this is kauai.gov/vaccine. The next one, I just got a text from Sisi Kilma Yakwe. He's my Marshallese contact. So we're going to be doing Eisenberg Park on Saturday, July 31st from 10 to 2:30. We'll have the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Our hotline is 938-0938. So if you need help finding a vaccination opportunity, give us a call on the hotline. We'll try to help you. Other ones coming up, there's just so many, but we have Rob's Good Times Grill is also going to be on Saturday. Rob shout out to him. He's offering the $10 gift card again for the first 50 people who show up. We'll be giving these t-shirts. We have multiple t-shirts and hats. We're not trying to bribe people. I mean, honestly, we're just trying to get more people out in the community that others can see and have a conversation with. And, I think people are probably sick of hearing from doctors and other health authorities, and they want to hear from people that they connect with, and, sort of the salt of the earth people. So we just kind of want to get those people more identified so everybody can have conversations with them. But we have upcoming vaccinations. Saturday, the August 7th, we'll be in Kekaha from 8 to 11 again at the neighborhood center. We just did Nainaho on the last Saturday, so we'll be back there on August 14th. Kalmakani again, August 14th at the community hall. Saturday the 14th, we'll be doing the Hanapepe Hawaiian Church from 1 to 2:30. And then we're doing the Humane Society. Shucks, that one is on a Friday from 4 to 6. I gotta check my dates here. I think that is the 20. Oh gosh, I don't want to misquote now. You can find it on the site. It's either the 23rd or the 30th. So we have a bunch of vaccination clinics coming up, really gearing up to try to protect people, as we get our kids back to school. So I think that's what everyone should have on their mind in the community. How can we protect our school-age children? If you're traveling, and you have children in your household, you're not vaccinated, please think about getting vaccinated before you travel. If you do travel, vaccinated or not, and you come back with any symptoms, please go get tested. I know, Mel, you ran through the free testing still being offered at the convention hall, or you can call your primary care physician. The last thing I wanted to mention before I go is a couple of significant people who passed recently. And I don't know if you guys talked at all about Haunani K. Trask. She was never, when she passed, yeah. She was never a kumu of mine. But, when I was going through college as a young adult, she was just sort of this pillar of Hawaiian issues. And, whether you liked her style or you like everything she said or not, I think we have to, show our aloha to her and respect for her, for being staunch about issues that sort of have been swept under the rug. And they're kind of coming up. A lot of them are coming up again through COVID. So I just did want to, give a little shout out to her passing. She's one of those people to me that was kind of like a legend, like Gabi Pahinui is another one. I just think of them as the Hawaiians. And, now I'm 40 years old and we're seeing, these people pass. And I think we're realizing that, we have to step up. We're the people that, can fulfill those roles now. So I wanted to, mention her. And then I just saw Kumu Nathan Kalama pass today, who was, behind Mokihana Festival. And I know a lot of people who I've crossed paths with on Kauai really, really, respect him and aloha him. I think he was a patient of our community health center too, if I remember correctly. So I just wanted to mention those people passing before I get off the air tonight. So thank you again for having me, and aloha.
Thank you very much, Doc, and appreciate you bringing that up. We also lost Teddy Blake today, longtime community person, very dear friend of mine and Charlie's as well. Super guy, man. I mean, it's again, life is short, people. Life is short. Susan Pacola Davis asked us to announce their town hall meeting on Wednesday. I guess this Wednesday at 6:09 p.m. 6:09. I don't know if that's a typo, but at hawaiicovid.com, hicovid.com. So if you guys are in the mood, go check it out.
They're going to have those people from that I mentioned. I believe the Pacific. It's PAAC, but I believe that's what's going to be happening there. So they've done a lot of work on keeping schools safe and what can be done to keep our kids safe. So I believe that event is, focusing on them. They have some pretty cool learning modules for teachers, but also for students and families. And they're all online for free.
6:00 p.m. Hawaii COVID, hicovid.com, PAAC. Thanks, Susan. Emma Ray, thank you. And I just want to say this real quick. Give me a minute. I was going to do a Facebook Live yesterday, and I decided, I'm just going to wait. But I just wanted to send a message out to those that are on the fence. This message is not for those that are 11 and under. These are not for those that are immune deficient, those that have medical reasons, those that have religious reasons. This message isn't for any of you. I love all of you and I respect everybody's choice whether or not to take this vaccine. But for those of you that are on the fence, those of you that are procrastinating, or saying, yeah, I'm gonna get them, but I'm gonna wait. This is for you guys. We have an opportunity to help our communities. I mean, the one way is by getting a vaccine. So again, if you can shut this off if you're not. If you're an anti-vaxxer, I still love you, but this is not for you. This is for those of you like my son, like my daughter, who was on the fence, but it was comfortable. They got comfortable being on the fence. They got really, really comfortable. Even though people were getting sick around them, they were still comfortable in waiting because they were going to wear their mask and so forth. But we have an opportunity, all of us that are on the fence, go help our community by getting a vaccine. Doc, if you can, actually, I'll go pull it off the website, but I'll share the dates and the times. But this is one opportunity. You know, you can give blood. You can donate your organs after you die. You can donate plasma. But this is an opportunity that we as individual citizens can help our community by stopping the spread of this doggone variant by taking the vaccine. So if you're on the fence, please, please, please consider getting the vaccine. Please. The risk of this vaccine is far outweighed by the benefits, and the fact that by getting this vaccine, you're going to help us stop this variant, stop this virus sooner than later. And remember, the sooner we can kick COVID's ass and Delta's ass, we will have, there we go, knock out COVID. We are going to be able to partake in Charlie's free concert. If for no other reason, it's to expedite Charlie's concert at the stadium with all the music, all the food, and Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen will be the keynote, guys. What do you think, Charles?
Well, I'm all in, and I forgot to tell you that for those of you that are on the outer islands, don't worry. Mel has graciously agreed to fly all of you over at his expense, so not to worry. He will fly you over.
All right, guys. Wednesday we get to highcovid.org. Oh, sorry, highcovid.org, 6 o'clock. Check it out, the town hall. I know we are looking at bringing on HHSC to talk about behavioral health on our show. I was actually going to do it on Wednesday. We won't because of the highcovid.org. So Charlie will try to shoot for Thursday or Friday or another day. But we'll let you guys know as soon as we get the dates and times locked down. All right, guys. We love you guys. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. Aloha.